On the day we buried my son, I lied twice before noon. The first lie was simple: I'm fine. It slid out of me like a bad habit, the way grief trains you to be polite when all you want to do is howl. The second lie was heavier, a stone in my throat, when Emily, my daughter-in-law, gripped my hands by the graveside and whispered, "Did he leave anything that can help me hold on?" I said, "We'll figure it out," as if the words weren't burning through the lining of my mouth. Rain ticked against a forest of black umbrellas. The casket sat like a punctuation mark at the end of a sentence none of us wanted to read. Emily stood closest, her hair pinned back, her cheeks raw from crying. She looked 20 years younger and 10 years older all at once, young enough to be a child, old enough to have lost everything. Her fingers were shaking so badly, the white roses trembled. One petal loosened, skated down wood lacquer, and stuck there, like a tear that didn't know where to fall. The priest droned on about dust and resurrection. I could not look at the casket. I looked at Emily instead, the girl who had married my son in a backyard with fairy lights and cheap champagne and the kind of promises you make with both hands. She had moved into his life with a suitcase and a laugh, and for years I had loved her like a daughter. Then 2 months ago, everything began to rot from the inside out. The diagnosis, the hospital smell that clung to our clothes, the way he got quiet, a dangerous quiet like a lake before a storm. And then he died. And a week later, an envelope arrived with my name on it. Inside, a will, a deed, 2 car titles, a bank account I'd never known about, all of it given to me, his mother. Not to Emily, not to charity, not to split, mine. I told myself there was a reason. Maybe he worried about Emily's spending. Maybe he feared medical debt would swallow it whole. Maybe he thought I'd be the safe harbor and pass things on the right way, at the right time. Or maybe, this thought I swallowed like poison, maybe there was a secret he needed me to keep buried. A shovel scraped stone. The first clods of earth struck the casket. Soft thuds, intimate as knuckles on a door. Emily's knees buckled. I took her elbow without taking my eyes off the priest. If I looked down, I would see my boy's name carved in granite and understand the world had broken in a way that could not be glued back together. Afterwards, the cemetery thinned quickly, grief sending people back to their warm kitchens and dry clothes. Emily stayed, shivering in her thin black coat, rain teasing the tips of her hair into errant curls. "What am I supposed to do now?" she asked. The way she said now killed me. It was a cliff, and she'd just discovered she'd been walking in the dark. "You'll stay with me tonight," I said. "We can talk in the morning." My voice was steady and motherly and so terribly false. Just then, my phone buzzed in my coat pocket. A new number. I declined the call, but it buzzed again, insistent. I slid it out, thumb trembling. The name on the screen wasn't a name at all, just a city number. The third buzz felt like it vibrated through my bones. "Do you need to get that?" Emily asked, still rubbing her arms for warmth. "It can wait," I said and slid the phone back. As I did, a small, sealed envelope slipped from the same pocket and fell into wet grass. I nudged it with my shoe, casual as a woman nudges litter she didn't drop. Emily didn't notice. She was watching the casket, lips moving around a prayer I couldn't hear. I stooped to retrieve the envelope and tucked it deeper into my coat. The flap had been slit and resealed. My stomach tightened. He had written my name on that envelope in his careful schoolteacher script. I had opened it in the kitchen and read the first sentence 3 times. "Mom, if you're reading this, it means the worst happened and I need you to do something for me." Wind pushed rain sideways like a hand urging us to go. Emily swayed. "I can't go back to the house," she murmured. "Not tonight." "We won't," I said. "Come with me." We drove in silence, wipers plucking at the windshield like a metronome for mourning. As we turned onto my street, a dark sedan idled with its headlights off. It flared to life just as we passed, then pulled away. Slow, deliberate. My hands tightened on the wheel. Emily didn't look up. Her head had fallen against the window, eyes closed, lashes spiked from rain. Inside, I set the kettle to boil and stole to my bedroom to hide what shouldn't have been seen: the will, the titles, the bank statement. They lay on my dresser like open wounds. The will, page 2, paragraph 4, had a line that felt like a dare. "I trust you to do right, even if it doesn't look right to anyone else." I slid everything into the bottom drawer of my nightstand. The drawer stuck halfway, then gave with a sudden jerk and a sound that made me flinch. From the kitchen, Emily called, "Are you okay?" "I'm fine," I lied for the third time. I brought her tea. She wrapped both hands around the mug as though it were a small animal she meant to keep alive. Up close, I could see the way grief had cracked the surface of her, the tiny tremor in her jaw, the brittle shine in her eyes, a new chip in the pink polish on her ring finger. She stole a glance at the hallway to my bedroom, then back at me. "Thank you," she said. "You don't have to thank me." "That's all I have left," she whispered, and the words came hot and fast, as if released by accident. "Thank yous and bills. I found an envelope from the hospital, and the mortgage and the car insurance. I don't even know where the title is." She swallowed. "I don't know how to be a widow." The kettle clicked off. Somewhere down the block, a dog barked twice and stopped mid-sound, like someone had put a hand over its mouth. Emily took a sip and flinched. It was too hot. I reached for the honey and knocked my elbow into the fruit bowl. An apple rolled off the counter, wobbled in a tight circle on the tile, and came to rest against the baseboard, as if listening. "I'll help you," I said. "We'll sort through everything. You promise?" I looked right at her. The girl who had held my son's hand through chemo, who had slept in a hospital chair until her spine protested, who had learned to read a monitor like a weather report, and nodded. "I promise." At midnight, I tucked Emily into the guest room like she was a child. She fell asleep clutching one of my son's hoodies, face half buried in the fabric as if she could find his heartbeat there. I turned out the light and stood for a moment in the doorway, listening to the soft sough of her breath. Then I went to my room and sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the nightstand drawer. The phone on my dresser lit up, the same unknown number. I let it ring. A minute later, a voicemail pinged in, followed by a text. Voicemail first. A man's voice, rich and practiced, like someone who argued for a living. "Mrs. Carter, this is Daniel Price. I represent an interested party in your son's estate. We need to speak tonight. There are complications you may not be aware of." An interested party. The phrase tasted like ash. The text arrived as I replayed the message. "Do not trust the will. Call me. DP." I stared at the screen until my eyes blurred, then wiped them and dialed the voicemail number. It went straight to busy, then to ring, then to silence. My door creaked. I jumped. The hallway was empty. A beat later, the house settled with that old bones sigh houses make when it rains. In the quiet, something else ticked. Not the clock, not the heater. It was faint, metallic. I followed it to the living room. The front door chain was still latched, the deadbolt thrown. Through the peephole, the porch was a spill of rain and streetlight, and yet, there on the mat, sat a thin, water-spotted manila envelope that hadn't been there when we came in. I unchained, opened, and pulled it inside. My name again. No return address. Inside, a photocopy of a bank statement, not the one I'd found in my son's will packet. This one showed a transfer 6 days before he died. 5 figures, out. The receiving account was a partial number I didn't recognize. Stapled to it, a Polaroid, slightly warped from wet. In the picture, my son stood beside a woman who was not Emily. The woman's face was turned away, but the line of her body, the way her hand touched his sleeve, intimate, easy, made my stomach dip as if the floor had tilted. Behind me, a floorboard whispered. I turned too fast, nearly dropping the Polaroid. Emily stood in the doorway, hoodie sleeves falling past her hands, eyes wide and glassy in the dim hall light. "I thought I heard you," she said. Then she saw the envelope. "What is that?" "Nothing," I said without thinking, and immediately hated myself for it. I slid the Polaroid back into the envelope. "Just some paperwork the funeral home sent early." Her mouth bent into an exhausted, disbelieving smile. "At midnight?" "It's been a strange week." The lie hovered between us like a moth seeking a flame. She hugged her arms. "I had a dream he was knocking at the door," she said softly. 3 knocks. He always did that. 3 knocks and then he'd say, "It's me," like I didn't know his knock. As if on cue, the door behind me rattled in its frame. Not a knock, a gust. Still, my skin prickled. Emily shivered, then yawned, embarrassed. "I'm sorry. I'll let you sleep." "Do you want me to sit with you a while?" I asked. She shook her head. "If I wake up again, I'll come find you." She hesitated, then added, "Thank you for everything." When she was gone, I slid the new envelope into the same nightstand drawer as the will. The wood complained again. I pressed my palm flat against it until the sound quieted. My phone vibrated once more. Another text, this one from an unknown number that was not Torth. Daniel Price. Tell her before someone else does. I slept badly, if sleep happened at all. Gray dozes interrupted by jolts of adrenaline and sound that wasn't sound. At dawn, the rain had gentled. The house smelled like wet trees and stale coffee. I made pancakes because feeding people is what my hands know to do when my heart doesn't. Emily came down barefoot, hair loose, eyes swollen and soft. I don't know how you're already cooking, she said, sitting as if Normal had poked its head in just to be mocked. I didn't sleep. I flipped a pancake. It landed perfectly, which felt offensive. She reached for the syrup and knocked something off the table. It clinked as it hit the floor and skidded beneath the chair. A small silver key, antique-looking, the kind you don't see much anymore. I bent to pick it up. Etched on the bow were 3 letters. HEC. What's that? She asked. Probably nothing, I said, turning it over, the metal cool against my palm. But the letters weren't nothing. They matched the monogram on the deed in the drawer. Harrington Estate Condominiums, my son's condo across town, the one he hadn't told Emily about, the one he'd left to me. Probably nothing, I repeated, and slid the key into my pocket. The doorbell rang, sharp and sudden. Emily startled so hard the fork clattered from her hand. Who is that? I pressed my lips together. I don't know. I opened the door to find a tall man in a dark suit, rain glittering on his shoulders like confetti that had lost the party. He held a leather portfolio under one arm. His smile was polite and dangerous. Mrs. Carter? He asked. I'm Daniel Price. I'm here about your son's will. He glanced past me into the kitchen, where Emily sat at the table twisting her wedding ring. And I believe the conversation concerns her too. The portfolio's metal clasp caught the light. He lifted it, clicked it open, and slid out a single page. There's been a late-filed codicil, he said. It changes everything. Daniel Price stood on my porch as if he owned it, rain dripping from his hairline, his shoes leaving damp marks on the welcome mat. The portfolio in his hand seemed to hum with menace. Behind me, I could feel Emily's eyes burning into my back, a mix of suspicion and fragile hope. A codicil? I repeated, my voice steadier than my heart. Yes, Daniel said smoothly, stepping forward without waiting for permission. He smelled faintly of rain and aftershave, sharp enough to sting. A codicil to your son's will. Filed late, yes, but still valid if the court accepts it. Emily rose from the kitchen table, gripping her coffee mug like a weapon. What does it say? She demanded, her voice breaking. Daniel's eyes softened slightly, as if rehearsed. Why don't we sit down? This conversation deserves chairs. I didn't want him in my house. Every instinct screamed to keep him at the threshold. But Emily's shoulders trembled, and I knew if I sent him away, she'd see me as the enemy. So I stepped aside. He laid the paper flat on the table. His fingers lingered on the edges, like a magician about to reveal a trick. Your son filed this amendment a week before his death, he said. It designates certain assets. His eyes flicked briefly to me, to his wife, Emily Carter. Emily's breath caught. Her hands flew to her mouth, and for a second she looked ready to collapse again. Oh my God, he didn't forget me. The words cut through me like glass. Daniel tapped the page. A house. A vehicle. A life insurance payout. Of course, it will require probate review since the original will left everything elsewhere. But if this codicil holds, Mrs. Carter, he looked at me pointedly, you may not be the sole beneficiary after all. The air thickened. My throat tightened as Emily turned to me, her eyes wet and wide. You knew, didn't you? I forced a steady breath. I knew about the first will, I admitted. Not this. Daniel raised an eyebrow, unconvinced. The clock ticked loud in the silence. Then Emily laughed, a sound too sharp to be real joy. I thought I was crazy, she whispered. I thought he left me with nothing, but he didn't. He still loved me. Daniel slid the paper closer to her. You'll need representation. Probate is complicated. I could refer someone. Emily nodded frantically, clinging to the page like it was a life raft. My stomach twisted. This was spinning out of my hands. I pushed back from the table. We'll need time to review. Of course, Daniel said, rising. But time is short. There may be competing claims. The words landed heavy. Competing claims. He buttoned his coat, gave a tight smile, and let himself out. Rain swallowed him whole. Emily stood frozen, eyes glued to the paper. Competing claims, she repeated. What does that mean? I opened my mouth to answer, but the drawer upstairs creaked again, though no one was there. My skin prickled. That night, Emily slept with the codicil under her pillow, as if afraid someone would steal it. I lay awake listening to the storm, my thoughts spiraling. Who had filed that paper? Why hadn't I been told sooner? And why had my son left 2 different wills, one favoring me, one favoring her? Around midnight, I went to the kitchen for water. A faint light glowed beneath the guest room door. Emily's voice murmured low, almost a chant. I leaned closer. She was on the phone. Yes, I have it. She doesn't know. Not yet, but I'll need your help. My stomach lurched. Who was she talking to? The floor creaked under my foot. The murmur stopped. Silence. Then a whisper. Hello, Mom? I retreated quickly, my pulse hammering. Mom? Emily's mother lived out of state, but was that who she'd called, or someone else? The next morning, a thick envelope arrived by courier. No return address. I opened it while Emily was showering. Inside, photographs. Dozens of them. My son, in places I didn't recognize. An upscale restaurant, a condo lobby, a lakeside cabin. Sometimes alone, sometimes with a woman whose face was always turned away. Just out of frame. At the bottom of the stack was a note scrawled in red ink. Ask yourself why he changed his will twice. My hands shook so badly I dropped the photos. They fanned out across the floor like fallen cards. Emily's footsteps approached down the hall. Panicked, I scooped them up, shoving them back into the envelope just as she entered. Towel around her hair. What's that? She asked. Bills, I lied. Always bills. She gave a bitter smile. At least bills don't change their mind about who they belong to. Her words stung more than she knew. Later that day, while Emily napped on the couch, I pulled the photos back out. One caught my eye. My son at a cafe, leaning across the table, smiling at someone just out of frame. His expression was one I hadn't seen in years, unguarded, radiant. My throat closed. Who had made him smile like that? The back of the photo had a date, 2 weeks before his death. Before I could think further, Emily stirred. I shoved the envelope into the drawer. Again, the wood groaned like a secret straining to be heard. That evening, Emily insisted on visiting the cemetery. We drove in silence. At the graveside, she knelt, tracing his name with her fingertips. I miss you, she whispered. But I'll find the truth. I swear I will. Her words chilled me. As she stood, a gust of wind lifted her scarf. It caught on something protruding from the soil, a corner of paper. She pulled it free. A damp, dirt-streaked envelope with my son's handwriting. Her hands shook. She looked at me, eyes wide. It's addressed to me. My chest clenched. Emily, maybe you shouldn't. But she had already ripped it open. Inside was a letter, blurred by moisture but still legible. Emily, if you're reading this, it means I didn't have the courage to tell you. There are things you don't know, things I left behind. Please, don't trust everything you're told. The truth is in the condo. You'll understand when you find the key. Emily's head snapped toward me, her expression fierce. The condo? What condo? The silver key in my pocket burned like fire. I opened my mouth, searching for an excuse, but the words wouldn't come. The lie sat there, heavy and sour. And then, from behind the gravestones, a camera shutter clicked. Emily spun, eyes scanning. Did you hear that? I did. And when I turned, I saw the brief flash of a lens retreating into the dark trees. Someone was watching us. The sound of the shutter cut through the cemetery like a blade. Emily whipped around, scanning the headstones, her breath ragged. My own pulse thundered in my ears. Someone was out there, close enough to listen, close enough to photograph, and bold enough not to hide the evidence. Who's there? Emily shouted, her voice cracking against the rain-heavy silence. No one answered. Only the rustle of leaves and the groan of an old oak. I grabbed her arm. Emily, leave it, let's go. No, she snapped, yanking free. Someone was watching us. Why? Why now? Her eyes burned with fury, with desperation. She clutched the damp letter like a lifeline, the words from my son still trembling in her hands. The condo. The truth is in the condo. The silver key in my pocket pressed sharp against my thigh, as if reminding me of its existence. We hurried back to the car. Emily's silence on the drive home was heavier than words. She stared out the window, jaw tight, fingers white around the letter. When we reached my house, she didn't even wait for me. She marched inside, tore open her purse, and began rifling through bills, papers, anything with my son's name on it. Emily. There has to be something, an address, a clue. He said condo. Which one? Where? Her hair stuck damp to her temples, her hands trembling as she scattered papers across the table. When she didn't find what she wanted, she turned to me, her gaze sharp, suspicious. "Do you know?" I swallowed hard. "No." The lie was out before I could stop it. Emily narrowed her eyes. "If you knew, you'd tell me, wouldn't you?" I forced a smile that felt brittle. "Of course." But the key in my pocket burned hotter. That night, while Emily slept, I slipped out of the house. The streets were wet and shining, traffic lights reflected in long streaks across the asphalt. My hands shook as I typed the address into my phone. Harrington Estate Condominiums. The building loomed modern and glassy, with a guarded lobby and a row of mailboxes that gleamed like teeth. I slipped inside behind a man carrying groceries, the key clutched in my palm. My son's condo was on the 5th floor. The door opened smoothly. The air inside smelled faintly of cedar and something else, something floral, unfamiliar. The living room was pristine, decorated with clean lines and muted colors, but what struck me most were the details that weren't his. A silk scarf draped over the couch, a pair of women's shoes by the door, a half-burned candle on the counter labeled Lavender Twilight. My breath caught. He had shared this space with someone else. On the kitchen island sat a folder. Inside were more bank statements, credit card receipts, and photos. My son and the same woman from before, the one with her face turned away. In these photos, her face was clearer. Dark hair, elegant profile, a smile that looked like it belonged to someone who thought the world owed her everything. And then, tucked in the back of the folder, a document that froze me cold. A life insurance policy. Not naming me. Not naming Emily. The beneficiary was the woman in the photos. The condo door suddenly rattled. My heart lurched. I shoved the folder back together and ducked into the hallway just as the lock turned. A woman's voice hummed softly, carrying through the door. The click of heels, the rustle of a coat. It was her. I bolted down the stairs, pulse hammering, the key clutched like a weapon. By the time I reached the street, my breath came in ragged bursts. The rain had started again, misting the city in silver. I didn't stop until I was back home. Emily was waiting in the kitchen, arms folded, eyes blazing. "Where were you?" My hair was damp, my shoes muddy. I couldn't lie this time, not convincingly. "I went to clear my head." Her eyes narrowed. She didn't believe me. Before I could spin another excuse, the phone rang. Emily snatched it up. "Yes?" Her face drained of color. "Oh my God, I'll be right there." She slammed the receiver down. "What is it?" I asked. Her hands shook as she grabbed her coat. "The hospital. There's an issue with the death certificate. They need me to come in." "The death certificate?" My stomach turned. "What issue?" But Emily was already at the door, tears streaking down her face, her voice a whisper. "They said it doesn't match." At the hospital, the fluorescent lights cast everything in a harsh, clinical glow. The administrator led us into a small office, files spread across the desk. "There's been a problem," she explained. The attending physician signed 2 different certificates. One lists cardiac arrest as the cause of death. The other— She hesitated, glancing at us with discomfort. "Lists possible poisoning." Emily gasped, covering her mouth. My knees nearly gave out. "That can't be right. He was sick. He had cancer." "Yes, but the toxicology raised questions," the woman said quietly. "We'll need to investigate further." Emily staggered back, her face twisted in horror. "You're saying he didn't just die?" "I'm saying," the administrator said gently, "it may not have been natural." On the drive home, Emily sat in stunned silence. The rain blurred the world into streaks of gray and red. Finally, she whispered, "He was murdered, wasn't he?" I gripped the wheel, my knuckles white. "Emily, don't." Her eyes cut to me, sharp as glass. "Who would want him dead, and why did he change his will twice?" I had no answer. Only the memory of the lavender-scented condo and the name on that insurance policy. When we got back, the house was dark, too dark. I reached for the light switch. It didn't work. Neither did the lamp. The air smelled faintly of cigarette smoke. Emily froze. "Did you leave the window open?" I followed her gaze. The back door was ajar, swinging slightly. We weren't alone. The switch snaps up and nothing happens. The kitchen stays a black lake, window glass reflecting our own pale shapes back at us. The back door breathes on its hinges, open, just an inch, letting in a thread of rain and the thin, acrid curl of cigarette smoke. Emily's whisper hooks into my arm. "We should call the police." Stay behind me, I say, even though my knees are made of paper. I reach for the first weapon my hand remembers, the heavy chef's knife in the block. Its weight steadies me and terrifies me in the same breath. From somewhere deeper in the house, a floorboard pops. Then a second. Not the gentle settling we know, but the exact, careful pressure of a foot testing old wood. Emily fumbles for her phone. It slips. The slap of it hitting tile ricochets off cabinets. We both flinch. Leave it, I hiss. Don't move. Another sound now, soft fabric against a doorframe. The faintest exhale, then stillness so perfect I can hear Emily's pulse ticking in her throat. I edge forward, knife low, breath shallow. The hallway yawns ahead, a tunnel of shadow. At the far end, my bedroom door is ajar, a blade of darkness within darkness. My mind catalogues what should be. The lamp left on, the nightstand drawer snug, the window latched. What is? The smell of lavender trailed through cigarette smoke, a memory of a silk scarf thrown over a condo couch. Hello? Emily says, voice breaking. Who's there? Silence. Then the faintest chuckle. It slides along my spine like ice water. I step into the hall, flick the next switch. Dead. The power is out or something worse. My phone vibration startles my palm. Unknown number again, the same relentless cadence as at the cemetery. I silence it by instinct and instantly regret the darkness roaring back in my ears. A shadow moves. Upstairs, I motion to Emily. We move together, slow, the way you would approach a stray dog you're not sure will bite. Each stair complains under our weight. Halfway up, a light flares below. The back door slaps wide. Wind barges in, and the living room curtain bellies like a ship's sail. I whirl, heart leaping into my mouth. By the time we reach the landing, whoever was here is gone. The window in my son's old room gapes open. Curtains X-ray themselves against night. Rain stipples the sill. On the desk, a single cigarette smolders in the glass dish I keep for paperclips, smoke spiraling a thin question mark into black. Emily presses a hand to her mouth. We don't smoke. I cross to the desk. The cigarette is lipstick-stained, deep, expensive berry. Beside the dish lies a monogrammed silver lighter, battered at the edges. 3 engraved letters catch the lightning. HEC, my breath snags. The same initials etched in the bow of the key that warms my pocket. Emily notices the lighter a beat later. ADC, she says, reading. Harrington Estate Condominiums. Maybe, I say, lying by reflex. Maybe it's just a brand. She turns in a slow circle, scanning the walls. Every photo on the bookcase has been turned face down. A floorboard whispers behind us. We both spin. Nothing there now but rain and the tiny theatrical sound of the cigarette finally dying. Call, I order. My voice surprises me by being steady. Now. Emily's fingers fly. She gets through. Her words tumble out. Back door open, someone inside. We're upstairs. Please, please hurry. The dispatcher's voice is low, trained, a mantra of stay put, and officers are en route. In the distance, as if conjured, sirens begin to wail. Thin at first, then thickening, rounding the corner of the night. I exhale for the first time in minutes. Downstairs, I say, wanting to be anywhere but in my son's room, where the absence of him and the presence of someone else make the air hard to swallow. As we pass my bedroom, I catch the nightstand drawer with my hip. It slides an inch open, reluctant. Something inside has shifted. Something new. I close the door and guide Emily to the kitchen. I need water. I lie, already counting the steps back. She nods, arms wrapped around herself so tightly I hear her knuckles creak. The moment she's seated, I double back. My pulse is a drumline in my ears. In the drawer, under the will and the codicil copy and the envelope from the hospital, lies a small black metal box I have never seen. Matte, narrow, locked. I pull the silver key from my pocket. It hesitates against the lock as if deciding whether it wants to tell me the truth. It fits. The click is both merciful and monstrous. Inside, a cheap burner phone, a tiny thumb drive taped to its back, a prescription bottle with the label peeled off, and a folded sheet of paper, edges softened by handling. I open the paper. My son's handwriting. My heart knows the tilt of those letters. Mom, if you find this, don't give it to the lawyer. Not Price, not anyone. Meet me at... The ink breaks, bleeds, the rest unreadable, save for 3 letters, circled hard enough to nearly tear the page. HEC. The sirens swell, then cut to silence as a car door thunks. Police, a voice calls. Announce yourselves. I slam the box shut, jam it back into the drawer, and shove the key deep into my pocket. My palm remembers the warmth of it, like it will never forget. Two officers sweep in with measured efficiency, clearing rooms, noting the open window, the cigarette, the footprints caught in the wet grass outside the back door. Emily's voice is high and brittle as she explains, again and again, that her husband is dead, that someone was in his room, that we are frightened and tired and don't understand any of it. A third person steps into the kitchen last, a man in a dark blazer without a uniform. He flips open a leather wallet. Detective Rowan Ames. His gaze is calm, eyes taking in everything without appearing to move. He crouches at the bookcase, lifts one of the face-down frames, studies the photograph of my son in a cheap birthday crown, then sets it back down the right way. Who would turn these over? He asks softly, more to himself than to us. Someone who didn't want to see his face, Emily says, voice trembling, or someone who knew him too well. Detective Ames sniffs the air. Lavender and cigarettes. He nudges the glass dish with a knuckle. Not a brand you get at a gas station. He looks to me. You mentioned earlier possible irregularities with the death certificate. I blink. How did? The hospital flagged the ME's office, he says. I'm looped when any unexpected death might be, less than natural. Emily sways, reaching for the counter to steady herself. The detective's gaze softens, then slides to my face and sticks, just for a second, on the bruise blooming at my temple. An old thing from bumping into a cabinet, suddenly made sinister by context. We'll send a unit by tonight, he says, for your peace of mind, and I'll want to collect anything unusual you've found. Notes, devices, medications. My mouth goes dry. The box. The drive. The bottle with its peeled-off label. In my pocket, the key grinds delicate teeth against my lifeline. I may have something, I say. Emily's eyes swing to me, sharp. She sees everything, that girl. 100 small betrayals have taught her to watch the corners of what people say. Show him, she whispers. Please. I lead them to the bedroom. The detective watches my hands as I pull the drawer, lift the box. He doesn't miss the way my fingers hesitate over it, the way my shoulders stiffen before he opens it himself. He examines the burner phone, the thumb drive, the bottle. He turns the bottle in his palm, eyes narrowing. Smell that? He cracks the cap, wafts air toward himself, then caps it again. Bitter. Digital as can be, so can a dozen other things. We'll test it. His gaze slides to the folded note. He reads it, lips thinning. You know Daniel Price? He asks me without looking up. Only that he showed up at my door, I say. Said there was a late-filed codicil. He's a fixer, Ames says neutrally. Sometimes for good people, sometimes not. Emily stiffens. Are you saying? I'm saying we don't know yet. He tucks the phone and bottle into evidence bags, then looks at the thumb drive, light glancing off its cheap plastic like a live thing. I'll need this. A reflexive panic skitters up my throat. Could we see it first? I hear how it sounds, like possessiveness, like guilt, and hate myself for it. Please, he was my son. Ames studies me a long moment. The house hums softly, a power surge somewhere settling back into itself. You can watch with me, he says finally, at the station, but it doesn't leave my custody. His voice is kind without being soft. It invites trust and warns against it in the same breath. Emily nods too quickly. We'll go now. Tomorrow, Ames says, you're both done for tonight. I'll have a car out front. He glances at the lighter on the desk. Bag that, he tells the uniformed officer beside him. Initials read HEC. Does that mean anything to you? He's looking at me. I hold his gaze. It could be a place, I say, or a person. His mouth ticks at one corner. It usually is. They leave us with a patrol car idling under a street lamp and a stack of forms that make fear bureaucratic. Emily cleans in tight, purposeless circles, wiping a clean counter, tugging a straight curtain, aligning a row of salt and pepper shakers that never misbehaved. Midnight hovers and then slips into morning. When the house is quiet again, I take the second thing I didn't hand over. A second thumb drive I'd found taped under the box's false bottom, thin as a fingernail. The detective hadn't seen me find it. The deceit sits sour in my stomach. Still, my fingers move on their own. In my bedroom, I plug it into my old laptop. The screen goes black, then blooms into a single video file. HEC OV. I click. My son fills the frame, close and unguarded. He's in our kitchen, the clock behind him telling me the exact indecency of the hour, 3:17 a.m. His eyes are bright and a little frantic, the way they got when he'd had too much coffee and not enough sleep. He leans in, voice low. Mom, if you're seeing this, I messed up, he whispers. I thought I could fix it before it touched Emily. I thought, God, I was stupid. HEC isn't just the building, it's a person. She doesn't forgive, and if I'm gone, it means she finally made good on a threat. A door closes somewhere off camera. His head jerks. A woman's voice floats from the hall, smooth, amused, a ribbon of smoke and honey. You're talking to yourself again, she says. Or are you confessing? He looks back at the camera, panic bright now. Don't trust Price, he rushes. Don't trust. The video jolts. The picture stutters, freezes on his open mouth. Sound reduces to a torn metallic hiss. Down the hall, the doorbell rings, two sharp chimes that slice the night. Emily calls from the kitchen, I'll get it. And then stops, the way people stop when everything inside them knows before their brain does. I pull the laptop plug with hands that don't feel like mine and hurry out. Emily stands by the door, jaw slack, one hand still in the air as if mid-reach. On the threshold, rain glittering on the shoulders of her lavender coat, is the woman from the photographs. The perfume hits first. Then the smile, practiced and bored. Good evening, she says, stepping over the welcome mat as if it were something written for other people. Her eyes flick to my pocket, like she can smell the metal there. I believe you have something of mine, she purrs. I'm Helena Cross. She pivots toward Emily, appraising and unkind. And you must be the wife. Helena Cross. The name dropped into the room like a shard of glass, sharp enough to cut every fragile silence we had left. Emily stiffened, her fingers curling into fists at her sides. The wife? She repeated, her voice rising. Who the hell are you? Helena smiled, slow, deliberate, the kind of smile that had more venom than warmth. She shrugged off her lavender coat, revealing a silk blouse, perfectly pressed slacks, and a gold chain that winked at her throat. She looked like someone stepping out of a boardroom, not into the house of a grieving family. I'm someone who knew your husband very well, Helena said, drawing out every syllable like a blade across skin. Better than you think. Emily's face went pale. You're lying. Am I? Helena arched a brow, producing a cigarette case from her bag. She lit one with a casual flick of a silver lighter. The same lighter we'd found in my son's room. The initials gleamed. HEC. The air thickened with smoke and the faint lavender perfume clinging to her clothes. Emily coughed, waving it away. I gripped the back of a chair to steady myself. What do you want? I asked, forcing steel into my voice. Helena exhaled a slow ribbon of smoke. What's mine? What he promised me. She glanced at Emily, her eyes glinting with something cruel. You're not the only woman he left behind. Emily lurched forward. You're insane. I caught her arm, pulling her back. Emily. Helena laughed lightly, as if we were children throwing tantrums. Your son was complicated. He made arrangements with me. Assets, insurance, things you don't want the police poking into. She leaned closer, her voice a silky hiss. But now you have them, don't you? My mouth went dry. Her eyes locked on mine. The box, the drive, the key. He told me he trusted you, but really, he didn't have a choice. And now you've involved the police. Emily's head whipped toward me. The police? What's she talking about? I hesitated. Emily's betrayal-filled gaze burned through me. Helena smirked. She knew she'd lit the match. The silence broke with a knock at the door. 3 sharp raps. Emily jumped. Helena merely smiled wider, as if expecting it. I opened the door to find Detective Rowan Ames on the porch, his coat wet from rain. His sharp eyes swept over Helena immediately. Mrs. Cross, he said flatly. You know her? I asked. Everyone in my line of work knows her. Ames replied, stepping inside without waiting. She's been investigated more than once, but never convicted. You might call her persuasive. Helena stubbed out her cigarette in my fruit bowl, ignoring Emily's disgust. Detective, she said sweetly. You know I'm here for what's mine. Don't interfere. Ames ignored her. He turned to me. We need to talk, alone. Helena waved her hand, feigning boredom. Talk all you like, but you'll find the truth leads back to me either way. Emily stormed forward, shaking with fury. You don't get to stand here and act like you belong in his life. He loved me. Helena tilted her head, pitying. Did he? Then why did he spend his last nights at my condo? The words detonated in the room. Emily's knees buckled. I caught her before she hit the floor. Her sobs tore through me, raw and hollow. Helena, satisfied with her damage, slid her coat back on. You'll be hearing from my lawyer. Unless, of course, you'd like to avoid the courts. We could settle this privately. She glanced at me knowingly, then sauntered out, her perfume lingering long after the door shut. Emily pulled away from me, her eyes red and blazing. "You knew," she whispered. "You knew about her, about the condo, about everything, and you said nothing." Tears stung my eyes. "I was trying to protect you." "Protect me?" Her laugh was jagged. "You've been lying since the day he died." I reached for her, but she shoved me back. "Don't touch me." The detective cleared his throat gently but firmly. "Both of you need to calm down. Helena thrives on chaos. Don't give her what she wants." Emily wiped her tears with shaking hands. "What she wants? She wants my husband's memory, my future, everything I had left, and she's already winning." Later, after Ames left with a promise to look deeper into Helena's connections, I sat in the dark living room. The rain had stopped, leaving the air damp and heavy. Emily hadn't spoken to me since. She locked herself in the guest room, the sound of muffled sobs leaking through the door. I pressed my palms together, staring at the faint lipstick mark still smeared on the ashtray glass. Helena had made her move. And now, Emily hated me. The question clawed at me, unrelenting. Had my son loved Helena more than Emily? As I turned off the lamp, something crinkled beneath the cushion of the couch. I pulled it out, a sealed envelope, my name on the front, written in my son's hand. My fingers shook as I tore it open. Inside, a single line in his writing. "If she comes for you, don't trust the courts. Find the ledger. It's hidden where the lavender burns." My breath caught. Lavender. The candle at the condo. Before I could process, the phone rang. Midnight again, unknown number. I answered with a trembling hand. A woman's voice, smooth, mocking, unmistakably Helena's, whispered, "Tick-tock, Mrs. Carter. You have something that belongs to me. If you don't bring it tomorrow night, Emily will pay the price." And then the line went dead. I didn't sleep. Helena's threat kept replaying until it wore a track through my skull. Bring it tomorrow night, or Emily pays the price. Every creak of the house sounded like a promise that time was running out. At 4:13 a.m., I made a decision I had no right to make for anyone but myself. I would go to the condo alone, find the ledger, and end Helena's leverage before sunrise. If I failed, Emily would never forgive me. If I succeeded, she might never have to know how close the darkness had come. The patrol car idled 2 doors down, blue silhouette glowing faintly behind fogged glass. I brewed coffee loud enough to be heard, clattered mugs, then left a note on the counter that said "Pharmacy, back soon." My hand hovered, then added a second line, "Please don't open the door for anyone." On the porch, the damp air smelled of wet asphalt and the metallic tang of a storm thinking about returning. I locked the door, tucked the silver HEC key deep in my coat, and slid into my car, headlights off until the corner. I pulled away without looking back. 2 blocks later, my phone vibrated. Unknown number. I answered, whispering hello, like a child playing spies. "Mrs. Carter," Daniel Price said, voice silky with pre-dawn calm. "You're up early." My stomach tightened. "You're tracking me now?" "Public streets, concerned counsel." He paused. "Going to the condo is a mistake." I kept my eyes on the road. "Why?" "Because Helena owns the night," he said. "And because the thing you're looking for doesn't belong to you." "Neither did my son," I said before I could stop myself. "But she took him anyway." A thoughtful exhale. "Meet me instead. 10 minutes, corner of Maple and 3rd. I can keep you out of court. Keep Emily safe. Like you kept my son safe?" The line went quiet, just breath at the edge of sound. "Don't go to the condo," he said finally. "You'll only feed her fire." He hung up. I drove faster. Harrington Estate condominiums rose like a lit match against the retreating night. The lobby security guard glanced at me, bored, then back to his tablet. I slipped into the elevator with a man in gym clothes who smelled like citrus and ambition. On 5, the doors hummed open onto carpet that swallowed footsteps and walls that wore their art like money wears a grin. The key turned cleanly. A hush met me inside. The hush of curated living. And beneath it, a trace of lavender, sweet and thin as a memory. I closed the door and held still until the pounding in my ears quieted enough to hear the rest of the world. The candle lay where I'd seen it before. Lavender twilight. Glass crazed with heat lines, wick burned to a nub. "Find the ledger. It's hidden where the lavender burns." My son's words had always been straightforward, literal as sunlight. Why would this be different? I set the candle on the kitchen island and ran my fingers around the base. Smooth glass, then there, a seam, faint as a breath. I twisted. It didn't move. I tried again using the dish towel for grip. A soft click answered me. The base threaded off to reveal a shallow void the size of 2 stacked playing cards. Inside, wrapped in a strip of linen that smelled faintly of smoke, was a thin slate-gray notebook. No title, no flourish, just a rubber band and restraint. I slid the band free. The first page had a date, 6 months before my son died, and a list of initials in 2 columns. Left, debtors, right, collectors. Lines joined them like a cruel family tree. HEC appeared on nearly every page, always in the right column. Money flowed toward her like water finding its level. There were numbers, too, amounts and dates, tiny ticks in a tidy hand. Under July 8th, transfer, $47,300, Act 0813. Under July 12, policy change filed, fee paid, DP. My fingers went cold. DP Daniel Price. Of course, I flipped faster. Midway through, the neatness broke. My son's handwriting intruded in darker ink, urgent like someone writing in a moving car. Stopgap only. She's pushing. If I move assets to mom, she can stall probate. If Emily out, she's safe for now. Beneath that, a smear where the pen had sat too hard. Codicil number 2 under duress? Don't sign? Then a line slashed through a name. R. Ames with a question mark. Then a second swipe that nearly obliterated it. I blinked at the mark until it swam. I didn't want to see the detective's name. I wanted to be wrong. A faint scuff came from the hallway. Fabric brushing paint. I froze. Breath seized mid-rib. The condo's HVAC sighed. A refrigerator hummed. Then silence, so complete it rang. I turned the next page. Paper rasped like a whisper. Tucked in the fold was a photo. My son at a conference table. Daniel at his right. Helena at his left. A banker I didn't know at the head. In the corner of the frame, a stack of documents wore a sticky note. Beneficiary change, expedite. The photo had been taken from somewhere high. An upstairs balcony? A mezzanine? A friend turned ghost. My phone buzzed against the counter. A text, block number. A single image. Emily in my driveway. Hoodie up, head down, slipping into the passenger seat of a dark sedan. The timestamp was now. Another text followed. You should have met me. DP. I swallowed acid. He'd just picked her up while my note sat on the counter like a child's lie. My throat closed around Emily's name. I typed back with fingers that didn't feel like mine. Where are you taking her? 3 dots pulsed, went still, then nothing. From the hall, a soft click, a key in a lock that wasn't mine. I snapped the ledger shut and jammed it into my coat. The front door creaked open with the confidence of someone who never worried about a welcome. Don't hide. Helena called, amused. It bores me. I looked at the patio glass. My reflection looked pale and old and furious. Beyond it, the city stretched indifferently to the river. I stepped into the living room before she could come find me. You like theatrics, I said. Here I am. Helena glided in, lavender coat draped over one arm, hair perfectly wrong for this hour. She took me in with a quick, delighted scan. Of course you'd come, she purred. Mothers are useful that way. She set her coat on the back of a chair and ran a finger along the candle's mouth, then smudged that finger across the counter as if claiming the surface. Find anything interesting? Her eyes flicked to my bulging pocket. What did you do with my daughter-in-law? I asked. Where is Emily? Helena's smile thinned into a blade. Safe, for now. Safer than your son was, at least. I took a step toward her. You poisoned him. Such an ugly word. She toyed with her cigarette case, then thought better of lighting up. He played with fire, he played with debt. Everyone gets burned. You changed his beneficiary, I said, pushing the words between my teeth. Daniel filed it. Your ledger says so. Her laugh was a clean, cruel bell. Daniel files lots of paperwork. Like I said, useful. He cares about what wins. A pause, then a lean in. Do you? I put a hand on the island because the room had started to tilt. Let her go. Bring me the ledger, she said, and she walks away with all her pretty edges still attached. The amusement drained. Bring the ledger and the key. Tonight, 8 p.m., Pier 9. Come alone, no police, no Ames, no Price, no little lies. Try me and I'll cut her out of your life the way your son cut you into his will. Before I could answer, a second key slid into the lock. The door swung wide and Daniel stepped in like he'd been invited to dessert. His tie was loose, his eyes not quite sorry. Helena's mouth curved. Speak of the devil. Good morning, Helena, he said lightly. Then to me, you didn't meet me, so I came to you. He closed the door with a click that sounded like a verdict. "We're past pretense," he said, moving in a slow circle as if appraising merchandise. "You have something we need. We have something you care about. We can trade and I'll go home." "Where is Emily?" The question scalded on the way out. Daniel's phone hummed. He held it up. On the screen, a live video wavered. Emily sat on the edge of a bed in a nondescript room, hands bound in front with zip ties, eyes swollen but defiant. "She's fine," Daniel said, and the way he said fine made the word a bruise. "For now." Emily looked straight into the camera. "Don't give them anything," she said, voice tight. "Don't." The video jittered, turned sideways, cut to black. I lunged for him. Helena moved faster, a small knife appearing in her hand like a conjured word. She didn't brandish it. She let it catch the light, then tucked it back with a promise. Daniel adjusted his cuff. 8 p.m. Pier 9, he repeated, as if booking a reservation. "Bring the ledger and the key, and everyone lives to argue about probate." "Detective Ames knows," I lied. Helena's eyes sparkled. "He knows many things. Whether he cares is different." I thought of my son's ledger, our Ames, and a cold, mean thought crawled up my spine. Daniel tapped the counter where the candle had been, then frowned at the empty base. His gaze lifted to mine. "You always were quick," he said, with something like respect. "Don't get clever tonight." They left as casually as they'd entered. Helena with my air in her lungs, Daniel with my fear in his pocket. The door clicked shut. The condo trembled back into itself. I set my palms on the island until the shaking in my arms passed. Then I yanked the ledger back out and flipped to the last pages. Names crowded the margins, initials, arrows, amounts. A hand-drawn map of the riverfront, a little X at Pier 9. Under it, in my son's urgent scrawl, "If you're reading this, bring a witness you can trust. Not Price. Not Cross. Not..." The ink stuttered and smeared. The last letter could have been an A, or I could have been seeing what I feared. My phone vibrated again. A new text from an unknown number. "Check the balcony planter." I looked at the sliding glass door, at the long, concrete rectangle of a planter lined with lavender so lush it looked fake. I slid the door. The morning was gray and thin. The lavender's scent rose when I brushed it, heady and sudden. In the soil beneath the plants, my fingers hit plastic. I dug faster, nails packed with damp earth, until a small black device came free. A GPS tracker, a blinking red dot pulsing like a heartbeat gone wrong. Another text landed. "They can see you. Ditch the car." A second later, a third, "Trust Ames." Then a fourth, as if written by a different hand, "Don't trust Ames." I wiped dirt on my coat and stared out at the waking city. Somewhere, Emily was counting breaths. Somewhere, a clock was already rushing toward 8. I put the tracker in the sink, smashed it with the base of the candle until the blinking stopped, then stood in the ruins of my certainty and called Detective Rowan Ames. He picked up on the second ring. "Mrs. Carter." "They have Emily," I said. My voice sounded like someone else's, thin, cracked. "They want the ledger and the key. Pier 9 at 8. A long inhale. "Don't go alone. I don't know who to trust." "Trust me," he said, and the words fell heavy as a stone. I ended the call without agreeing and shoved the ledger under my coat again. As I turned to leave, a shadow crossed the frosted glass of the condo door. Slow, patient, unhurried. Knuckles rapped twice, pause once more. 3 knocks. The pattern Emily had dreamed. I reached for the handle, every nerve screaming both yes and no, then stopped dead when a familiar voice spoke softly through the door, hoarse, shaken, and impossible. "Mom, open up." I froze, my hand hovering over the door handle. My son's voice, hoarse, frayed, but undeniably his, slid through the crack like smoke. "Mom, it's me, open up." The world tilted, my knees buckled, and I caught the wall to keep from collapsing. He was gone. I buried him. I stood at his grave, but the voice outside was him. "Mom." The sound was softer this time, urgent, desperate. I pressed my palm against the door as if I could feel him through it. "No," I whispered, shaking my head. "No, this isn't possible." The knob turned slightly, testing. "Please," he said. "I don't have much time." My hand gripped the lock. If I opened it, what would I see? My son alive, an imposter? A trick from Helena, another cruel performance? Before I could decide, my phone buzzed. Unknown number again. A text. "Don't open the door. Not him." I stumbled back, my breath shallow. My son's voice, so familiar it hurt, spoke again through the wood. "Mom, trust me. Don't believe their lies." My chest caved in. Both sides demanded belief, and whichever I chose might kill me. I forced myself to whisper, say something only my son would know. A pause. The night before my wedding, you told me not to wear the blue tie because it made me look like a busboy. You said Dad would have agreed. The memory struck me like lightning, private, unrepeatable. Tears blurred my vision. It was him. Or it was someone who knew too much. The knock came again. 3, steady, patient. My hand shook on the handle. And then, down the hall, the front door burst open. Police. Detective Rowan Ames's voice thundered through the condo. He charged in, gun drawn, 2 officers at his back. The figure outside vanished. The peephole showed nothing but an empty hallway. "What the hell are you doing here?" I cried. Ames holstered his weapon. His eyes scanned the room, sharp and restless. "We tracked your phone. You weren't safe. Who were you talking to?" I swallowed, throat raw. It sounded like my son. Ames's face didn't move, but his eyes flickered with something unreadable. "That's impossible." "I know what I heard." "You heard what they wanted you to hear," he said firmly. "Helena, Price, they'll use any weapon. Even voices." I wanted to argue, but the terror in my gut wouldn't let me. Ames motioned for the officers to sweep the condo. When they returned, one held a small speaker, sleek and black, no larger than a book. "Found it outside the door, sir. Remote voice emitter." The blood drained from my face. So it hadn't been him. Just a recording. A trap. Emily's dream. 3 knocks. My son's voice. None of it real. I sank into the couch, my chest hollow. Ames crouched in front of me. "Listen to me. They're tightening the noose. They want you rattled, broken. Don't give them that." My eyes met his. "They have Emily." His jaw clenched. "I know. That's why we need to play this carefully." I pulled the ledger from my coat and slammed it onto the table. "This is what they want. My son left it for me. If it's worth Emily's life, then give it to them." Ames shook his head. "If we hand it over without leverage, she's dead anyway. Helena doesn't leave witnesses." The room spun. "Then what do we do?" He flipped the ledger open, scanning quickly. His eyes narrowed at the initials and numbers. "This isn't just money. It's a map of every dirty deal Helena's touched in 10 years. If this goes public, she burns." "So?" I snapped. "Let her burn." Ames looked at me with an intensity that scared me more than Helena ever had. "We'll use it to smoke her out. Pier 9 at 8. You'll bring the ledger and the key, but not to hand over, to bait her." "And Emily?" His silence stretched too long. "She's bait too, isn't she?" I whispered. He didn't deny it. That night, as the clock ticked toward 8, I stood at the pier in the cold wind, the ledger pressed to my chest. The river lapped black and merciless at the pylons. The patrol car that had followed me melted away blocks back. Ames had insisted I come alone. The pier stretched into the water like a gallows. At the end, under the single dying street lamp, Helena stood in her lavender coat. Daniel Price flanked her, his smile easy, his eyes cold. And between them, Emily. Hands bound, gagged, her eyes wide and glistening with terror. The sight of her tore the breath from my lungs. Helena stepped forward, her heels clicking sharp against the boards. "Right on time, Mrs. Carter. And you brought my property." She held out her hand. Daniel pressed the knife lightly against Emily's throat. A cruel punctuation. "Ledger," Helena demanded. "Now." My son's voice whispered in memory. "Don't trust Price. Don't trust Cross." And behind me, the night hummed with silence so taut it could break at any second. Wind knifed off the river and crawled under my coat, cold enough to make my molars ache. The pier boards creaked like old bones. Under the sputtering street lamp at the far end, Helena stood immaculate in her lavender coat, the color almost obscene against the industrial gray. Daniel Price lingered a step behind, hands stuffed in his pockets, a knife gleaming casually in his right hand as if it were a pen he forgot to cap. Between them, Emily. Her wrists were zip-tied in front, a dark bruise blooming along her cheekbone, a gag cut into the corners of her mouth. Even with fear blazing in her eyes, she lifted her chin, stubborn and alive. She saw me clutching the ledger against my chest, and something like relief flickered, followed by dread. "Right on time?" Helena purred, as if we'd met for a late dinner. "You brought my property." I stepped closer, every board complaining beneath me. "You hurt her and I burned this," I said, holding the ledger up. "I'll feed your empire to the river." Helena's smile didn't reach her eyes. "If I cared about your theatrics, I'd be in theater. Ledger, now." Daniel angled the knife so the street lamp's thin light kissed its edge. "No speeches," he said. "No stalling. Miniature waves slapped the pylons. Slap, hush, slap, like someone clapping slowly at a bad performance. Behind me, a gull screamed, and the sound cut off mid-breath. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A text, 2 words, don't move. Another followed before the first finished arriving, trust Ames. A third landed on top of them, a contradiction in the same font, don't trust Ames. I swallowed hard. Let me see that she's okay. I pointed at Emily. Untie her hands, now. Cute, Helena said. You think you're negotiating, Daniel? He reached for Emily's gag. Emily flinched, then forced herself still. When he yanked it down, she coughed, choked out air, then locked her gaze on mine. Mom, she rasped, raw. The word ripped something open in me. Speak, Helena said, bored. Say hello, plead for mercy, name your favorite fruit, it's all the same to me. Emily ignored her. Don't give it to her, she said, a fierce whisper, please. Daniel pinched the gag between 2 fingers and lifted it meaningfully. Last warning. Emily's eyes darted to the ledger, then to my pocket, then back to my face. A tiny shake of her head. She flexed her fingers, clenched twice, unclenched. 2. Was that a code or just fear shaking loose? Helena sighed. Enough. She extended her hand. Her nails were pale pink, perfect moons. Ledger. Key. I took 1 step forward, and a red dot slid across my chest. I froze. The dot hovered on the ledger's spine, steadied, then jittered to the planks by my feet. Not a laser pointer children play with on cats, a sight. Eyes up. Daniel said softly, almost kindly. Snipers don't like to be ignored. I lifted my head without lifting my hands. The warehouse roofs along the river wore darkness like hats. Somewhere up there, someone watched the numbers of our lives spin and picked where to put the decimal. What do you want with it? I asked Helena, because words were the only weapon I had left. Why did you change the policy? Why poison him? Such ugly verbs from a woman who hoarded a secret. She tilted her head, amused by my moral outrage. Your son made promises. I enforced them. He owed, I collected. He tried to reroute the river through you. She flicked her gaze to the ledger. But water returns to its bed. Water also drowns, I said, and it carries bodies. Morbid, she murmured. Daniel, do you find this family charming or dull? Dangerous, he said, and that was the first honest word he'd offered me. A shadow shifted at the far end of the pier. There, then not. I felt the hair lift at the nape of my neck, just as a low voice drifted from the dark. Mrs. Carter, step back. Detective Rowan Ames walked into the sickly circle of light. Hands open, jacket unbuttoned. He looked like a man taking a walk, the river wind flattening his tie against his shirt. His eyes were calm, and I hated him for it. Helena's smile sharpened. Detective, she said, you made it. I was beginning to feel neglected. Back away from the girl, Ames said, voice gentle as a lullaby that had decided to grow teeth. Daniel's laugh was a coin dropped in a church. Careful, he said. The roofline is jittery tonight. Ames didn't look up. He didn't need to. You're going to make me bored, he said. Let's not. Did you bring friends? Helena asked him, voice mild. Or did you come alone? She leaned into the question. There was something greedy in the way she said alone, as if she hoped the word would turn out to be a synonym for vulnerable. Ames's gaze flicked to me for a heartbeat, just a flash, nothing you could bet on. Then back to Daniel. You want the ledger. She wants the key. I want the girl. We all go home with a prize. Mini cliffhanger. A boat motor coughed below the pier, once, then twice, and a low-profile skiff slid under the planks like a thought you can't catch. Someone down there killed the engine, and the river swallowed the sound whole. You hear that? Emily whispered, the syllables barely making it past her breath. Her eyes found mine. Help. I stepped forward, ledger outstretched. Take it. Let her go. Helena lifted a finger. No. Toss it into Daniel's hands. Let me untie her. Now. Ledger first. Ames's voice cut through, an edge under silk. Helena, don't overplay. She considered, weighing the scale we couldn't see. Fine. She said at last, incredulously generous. We do this like polite thieves. On 3, you toss the ledger. Daniel releases the wife. Detective keeps his hands where I can see them. A tiny shrug. We all pretend to be civilized. From the roofline, the red dot wavered, then stilled on the ledger again. I could feel the sniper's patience like a hand on the back of my neck. 1, Helena said, smile bright and false. 2. I didn't wait for 3. I threw. Daniel's knife flicked up as if his arm had been born for that motion. The ledger cracked against his palm, then exploded into pages. They went everywhere. White birds startled into flight, numbers and initials and arrows blooming in the wind. Some pages skittered down the pier, others took the river's invitation and flung themselves into black. "No!" Helena snarled, lunging for the nearest sheet. She slapped her heel down on one, pinned it, and ripped it up like a weed. "You idiot!" Daniel swore, freed the knife from his surprise, then realized too late that I was already moving. I barreled into him with all the fury my smaller body could borrow. The knife clanged off the boards and spun away, a bright fish flashing in a dark stream. Emily twisted, drove her shoulder into Helena's sternum, and the zip tie snapped around her wrists with a sound that made my heart leap. She'd loosened it already, slipped one hand free when Helena was busy smiling. My brilliant girl. Mini cliffhanger. A shot cracked from the roof. The street lamp exploded, showering us with glass like cheap glitter. Darkness hit like a dropped curtain. I smelled cordite and river and the copper ghost of blood even before I knew if anyone had been hit. "Down!" Ames shouted. He dove, rolled, came up with his gun in both hands, braced along the pier's rail. "Move, Emily." "Left." Emily dropped flat. A bullet chewed a splinter out of the board where her head had been. Helena hissed something ugly and elegant and very old. She vanished sideways, coat flaring, heels clattering into an echo, and then nothing. There was a ladder cut into the pier somewhere. I remembered seeing it in summer, kids daring each other into the river. The skiff engine ticked like a cooling heart under the planks. I scrambled on hands and knees, fingers finding paper, finding nothing. Daniel's foot slammed into my ribs. Pain burst white and I lost air. He stumbled, grabbed for the rail, caught it, swung back, and then Ames was there between us, his shoulder slamming Daniel into the piling. The knife scraped wood. Daniel's breath jumped out of him in a sound that wasn't a word. Mini cliffhanger. The river lit up, white-blue. A spotlight arcing from the far bank. For an instant, we were insects pinned to a board. The sniper's dot disappeared in the glare, and when my vision cleared, I saw two more shapes on the roof, silhouettes flitting like paper cutouts, and then a third, smaller shape at the pier's mouth. "Stop!" A voice shouted from the shadows behind us. "Police! Drop your..." The rest evaporated under the machine cough of a silencer. The smaller shape folded, a marionette with its strings cut. "Run!" Ames snapped, and for one weird, crystalline second I considered running. I considered leaving the ledger's ghost to haunt the river and taking Emily's hand and becoming the kind of person who disappeared. But Emily wasn't running. She was crawling toward the edge, toward something I couldn't see. "Mom," she gasped. "The key." I looked down. The silver key, the HEC key, had worked loose from my pocket in the chaos. It teetered at the lip, half on wood, half on air, catching the spotlight and throwing it back. The river below moved like muscle. I reached, and Daniel's palm crushed my wrist. "Trade," he whispered in my ear, breath hot, the word a dare. Key for breath. Something shifted behind him. A shadow, unpeeled from a shadow. Helena's hand appeared on his shoulder, elegant, decisive. "No," she said, and shoved. Daniel pinwheeled. He grabbed for me. I yanked back. His fingers raked my coat, and then he was gone. The river swallowed the sound, the way a mother sometimes swallows a cry that will only scare the child more. "Up," Helena told me, voice low and bright. "Now." Ames pivoted, gun trained on her. "Don't." She laughed. She actually laughed. "Detective, please. We've both survived long enough to know what you will and won't do." Her eyes cut to me. "Gee." Emily was beside me now, wrists bleeding where the plastic had gnawed. We were a tangle of fear and breath. The river licked at the pilings with idiot patience. "I have a copy," I lied, swallowing the taste of metal. "You hurt her and a dozen journalists wake up famous." "Everyone says that," Helena said, amused. "Almost no one means it." I closed my fingers around the key. The metal burned cold. I could feel my son in the weight of it, his bad choices, his good intentions, his last, scrambled human attempt to put the pieces he'd broken back together. "Throw it," Helena said softly, "or she goes over." She moved so fast I didn't see how she did it, just that suddenly Emily was at the very edge, Helena's arm banded across her ribs like a sash made of wire. "Don't." My lungs tried to crawl up my throat. "I'll throw. Something behind Helena flickered. Motion, wind, light. Ames's eyes flicked too, and that told me everything. He didn't shout. He didn't warn her. He just moved his gun a fraction and breathed like he was blowing out a candle. A small sound, a spark off metal. Helena flinched, and the pressure of her arm on Emily's ribs shifted from hold to push. Emily's heel slid. Wood went out from under her. She grabbed the air, fingers finding slick nothing. I leapt. There is a moment when your body remembers every piece of water it ever touched. Bathtubs and summer hoses and rain against your face at gravesides. There is also a moment when the river is a mouth and you are a word it intends to swallow whole. My shoulder hit something, Emily, or the piling, or the space between us. The key burst from my fist, a silver fish skipping. It flashed, rolled, and fell, just ahead of us, tipping into black. We went with it, the three of us, me, my girl, and the last clean thing my son left me, tumbling in the white hiss and the cold, fast dark. The water was a fist closing around me. Black, icy, unrelenting. My lungs seized, my ears filled with thunder. Emily's arm brushed mine, wild, frantic, and I clutched for her in the dark. My fingers caught fabric, then flesh. She kicked hard, panic driving her, but I tightened my grip and pulled her to me. The current tore at us, dragging us under the pier, slamming us against the pylons. Somewhere above, gunfire cracked, muffled by the water, each bullet a muted bell tolling through the river. The world shrank to cold and fight, and the desperate need to break the surface before the blackness inside became permanent. We rose, coughing, gasping, clinging to each other. Rain slapped our faces as if punishing us for surviving. The pier loomed overhead, shadows moving, voices shouting, Ames, Helena, men I couldn't place. The silver key was gone, lost to the current. Swim, I rasped, dragging Emily toward the dark silhouette of a boat moored under the next pier. She choked, spit water, but nodded. We kicked together, every stroke a war. By the time we reached the boat, my arms burned, my lungs raw. I hauled Emily up first, then collapsed beside her, shivering and soaked. The boat smelled of fuel and rust. A tarp covered something in the stern. I yanked it back. Life vests, a small outboard engine, a box of tools. We can't stay here, Emily panted, her teeth chattering. They'll find us. I grabbed a vest, shoved it over her head. Help me with the motor. Her hands shook, but she obeyed. The engine coughed, caught, roared to life. We shoved off just as a flashlight beam sliced the water behind us. Shouts echoed. The river carried us into the dark. We drifted east, hiding in the maze of docks until the city lights thinned. Finally, I cut the motor, letting the current carry us in silence. Emily hugged herself, shivering violently. You okay? I asked, voice ragged. She looked at me with hollow eyes. I thought we were gonna die. I pulled her into my arms, stroking her wet hair. Not while I'm breathing. For a moment, she clung to me, the way she had at the funeral when everything first shattered. Then she pulled back, her jaws set. Why didn't you tell me about Helena? About the condo? About everything? The question carved me open. Because I thought I could protect you. Her laugh was bitter, broken. Protect me? You almost got me killed. I wanted to argue, but she was right. Every lie, every silence had only built this trap higher. We found a small inlet hidden from the river's main channel and tied the boat to a rotting dock. In the distance, sirens wailed, a thin hymn to chaos. Emily sat on the dock, staring at the black water. He loved me, she whispered. Didn't he? The question twisted like a knife. Yes, I said firmly. He did. Whatever mistakes he made, whatever Helena meant to him, it doesn't erase that. She shook her head, tears sliding down her face. Then why did he leave everything to you? I had no answer. Only the weight of his last messy attempts to keep her safe. A rustle in the trees made me stiffen. Emily gasped. I pulled her behind me, my body trembling with exhaustion but ready to fight. A figure emerged from the shadows. Not Helena. Not Daniel. Detective Rowan Ames. He raised his hands slowly. It's me. Don't shoot. I nearly collapsed from the release of tension. How did you? Track her on your phone, he said simply, stepping onto the dock. His eyes swept over us, soaked, bruised, alive. Relief flickered in them, quickly masked. You're lucky. That could have ended in the morgue. Emily's face hardened. You let it get that far. You used me as bait. Ames didn't deny it. It was the only way to draw Helena out. Did it work? I demanded. He shook his head. She slipped into the river. My team lost her downstream. Emily's fists clenched. So she's still out there? Yes, Ames admitted, but not unscathed. The ledger's pages scattered. Some we recovered, enough to start building a case. I thought of the key sinking into the river, gone forever. Or maybe not. Without the key, what now? Ames's gaze darkened. We don't need the key, we need testimony, evidence, and you have both. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. But there's something you should know. Your son, he wasn't just a victim. He was working with me, undercover. The dock seemed to tilt beneath me. What? He came to us months ago, Ames said. Helena had her claws in him, debt, blackmail, threats. He agreed to gather intel. The ledger was part of it. He hesitated, his jaw tight. He didn't want Emily involved. That's why he left everything to you, to shield her. He thought you could hold it until it was safe. Emily staggered back, her face crumpling. You're saying he lied to me, to us? Ames's voice was low. He lied to keep you alive. Mini cliffhanger. A splash cut through the night. We all turned toward the water. A shape rose from the river, clawing onto the dock. Helena, soaked, hair plastered, eyes burning with feral rage. In her hand a gun. You should have let me drown, she hissed, because now everyone dies. Helena hauled herself onto the dock like a creature that refused to be named. Water sheeted off her lavender coat in dark runnels. Her hair clung to her skull. In her hand, a compact pistol glittered, black, neat, almost delicate. It looked wrong there, like a pearl turned into a blade. You should have let me drown, she hissed, because now everyone dies. Emily stumbled behind me, breath hiccuping, wrists raw and bleeding. Detective Ames took one measured step forward, palms out, posture relaxed the way a storm can sometimes pretend to be sky. Helena, he said, voice low, tired. Gun down. It's over. Her smile was a cut. Over is for people who can't pay their debts. She leveled the pistol at my chest. Mini cliffhanger. A shout from the river. Police! Drop it! And the sudden spear of a spotlight turned the dock into a white stage. The light flared off the pistol's slide. Helena didn't blink. Back, Ames breathed, hardly moving his lips. I want the key, Helena said, voice steady, and the ledger, and every copy of whatever you think you have. Or I put holes in your grief, and then I go find smaller targets. My stomach folded. The key is gone. She flicked her eyes toward the black water, calculating. Then you go find it, or you improvise a grave. Her finger tightened. Ames's gun barked once. The sound cracked the night in half. Helena's pistol flew from her hand, a bright tumble of metal, skitter, splash, gone. She cried out, grabbed her wrist. Blood threads laced her fingers where the bullet had kissed bone. Mini cliffhanger. She dove, not for the gun, already swallowed, but for the knife strapped inside her coat. The blade flashed. Emily, on instinct and rage, kicked. Her foot connected with the knife's hilt and sent it spinning into the river with a plop as small as a secret. Enough, Ames snapped, and his voice was different now. No silk, only steel. Hands. Footsteps thundered on the pier behind us. Shadows became uniforms, shout became command. 2 officers seized Helena. She writhed once, then went still, lips peeling into a smile that had always been meant for photographs. You'll lose her anyway, she breathed, turning her face to me. I taught him how to lie. Not like you, I said, and my voice surprised me by not shaking. Blinding lights swept left, found movement at the pylon, steadied. A head surfaced 10 yards down. Daniel Price, sputtering, clawing for a ladder. He dragged himself up, coughing river and pride, and collapsed on the boards like a man surprised to find he wanted another minute on Earth. Ames moved toward him. Daniel flinched, hands half raised. I can help, he rasped. I can give you everything. You already did, Ames said calmly. Every time you forgot which pocket your conscience was in. Deals, Daniel gasped. I'll make. You'll make statements, Ames said, gesturing the cuffs, and we'll see what you've got when you're under oath. Mini cliffhanger. My phone, somehow still alive, buzzed against my soaked coat. A number I didn't know. I almost ignored it, then saw the preview line. Toxicology rush. Confirming digitoxin. The text from the medical examiner lit the screen stark and unforgiving. Poison. My son's death certificate would become an indictment. Helena's smile didn't falter, even as the officer read her rights. You think numbers and paper will save you? She purred. You think juries care about ledgers? Ames lifted one brow. They care about money and murder. You wrote both in your own hand. Her eyes slid to me, sharp. And you, little archivist, will you testify that your son was a traitor, that he loved me? I'll testify he tried to fix what you broke, I said, and that he loved his wife more than his fear. For the first time, something flickered behind Helena's eyes. Not fear, but recognition that the performance was playing to an audience that had stopped clapping. They walked her past me. Water dripped from her coat and dotted the dock like small, oily stars. She didn't look back. In the weeks that followed, life reassembled itself with the slow stubbornness of ivy finding light. The news called Helena a philanthropist, then a fraudster, then a predator. Headlines learned the shape of her name and spat it out with relish. Alleged became accused. Bail became impossible. Daniel, in a suit that looked borrowed from a better man, sat at a table under bad fluorescent lights and emptied himself into a microphone. He changed beneficiary forms. He couriered gifts. He managed accounts numbered like interstate exits. He said pressure and leverage like they were synonyms for love. He did not say poison because he didn't have to. The lab said it for him. He took a plea. He offered names, dozens. The ledger gave us dates and amounts. The thumb drive Ames had logged into evidence gave us voices. And the video, my son whispering at 3:17 a.m., eyes sleepless and bright, gave a jury a face. Don't trust Price. Don't trust. The audio stuttered there, but it didn't matter. The nameless warning hung in the room like incense. They didn't need the last name to know it wasn't Mom. At the hearing, where Helena was denied bail, she wore beige jail cotton like it offended her, which it did. She didn't look at me. She looked at the judge like he was a problem whose answer she already knew and had switched out. When he said remand, her mouth shaped a word I couldn't hear. Outside, reporters flung questions like confetti. One asked if I regretted keeping the inheritance secret. I answered honestly. Every hour, I said. And I regret not telling the truth faster. It almost cost me my family. That night, at my kitchen table, the documents lay again like a crime and a cure. The will naming me, the codicil naming Emily, the car titles, the deed. For the first time since the funeral, the pages didn't feel like they were humming. I should have told you, I said, my hands open on the wood between us. I thought he left it to me so I could hold it for you until it was safe. I let fear make me stingy with the truth. Emily listened. The new bruise on her cheek had gone yellow around the edges, stubborn color returning to her face. She traced the grain of the table the way you trace a scar to remind your hand where not to hurt. He left it to you, she said softly, because he trusted you to do the ugly work, and because he wanted to keep me off the ledger. She swallowed. I understand, I hate that I do, but I do. I want you to have the house, I said. Both cars, the account. We'll use what the court doesn't claw back for restitution to the people in those pages. And, if you'll let me, I want to help you build something with what's left that isn't made of fear. Her eyes lifted. For a moment, I saw the girl in the backyard under fairy lights, cheap champagne foam on her lip. I saw my son's hand in hers, young enough to believe time was a promise it could keep. We'll build something he would recognize, she said. And something he wouldn't. Because we've learned better. We retitled everything. Signatures stacked up like small, clean apologies. The house became ours, not mine. The cars became practical, not trophies. We opened a fund in his name with the money the court allowed, a scholarship for paramedic trainees, and a microgrant for spouses surviving debt and medical ruin. We called it 3 Knocks, not because of the cruel trick at the condo, but because of the way he always came home. 3 Knocks. Then, it's me. Like he understood that names were necessary in a world eager to erase. Ames came by with a lavender plant in a plastic pot and a smile he hadn't quite earned yet. From evidence, he said dryly. Figured you could give it an honest job. We laughed for the first time without having to force it. He stood in the doorway a moment longer than he needed to. You did good, he said. Most people hand the ledger over and pray the dark is polite. I almost did, I said. He nodded, hands in his pockets. That's still most people. There was a question in Emily's face, about trust, about the R. Ames scribble in my son's frantic ink. Ames caught it and didn't pretend not to. Your husband asked if he could trust me, he said. He never got to answer. I hope you will. Emily looked at me, then back at him. We will, she said, and if the word trembled, it also held. Spring moved in, laying soft hands on hard corners. We kept the patrol car for a while. Eventually it left. The house learned new rhythms. Sometimes, at dusk, I'd catch Emily at the window, lips moving around a conversation she was having with the person no one else could see. Sometimes, in the morning, I'd catch myself doing the same. We planted lavender by the stoop. On good days, the scent was comfort. On bad, it was a test we passed anyway. One evening, months later, I heard 3 small knocks at the door. My heart misfired, and then steadied when a laughing voice called, "It's the electrician." The porch light had been fickle since winter. I let the man in and watched him from the kitchen as he unscrewed the old fixture, wired the new, tested it until it glowed a warm, steady amber. After he left, Emily and I stood in the doorway under light that didn't stutter. The world past the stoop looked ordinary in a way that felt almost ceremonial. Kids on bikes, chalking the sidewalk. A couple arguing softly about groceries. A dog with a bandana deciding every tree was poetry. "You know," Emily said, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear, "he would have hated the name 3 Knocks. He would have said it was corny." "He would have," I agreed, smiling. "And then he would have bragged about it to his friends." She leaned against me, shoulder to shoulder. "We're going to be okay, aren't we?" It wasn't a question that wanted facts. It wanted a promise. Promises are dangerous and necessary. I took a breath. "We already are," I said. Somewhere inside, the lavender breathed its soft, clean breath, and for once the house didn't answer with a creak or a warning. It answered with quiet, the kind that isn't empty, but full. We stepped back in and closed the door, not to keep the world out, but to keep the light in. We did not lock it immediately. We would, later. We had learned boundaries were love too, but for a few minutes more, we left it soft on the latch, the way you do when you expect someone good to find their way to you. 3 knocks, then a voice you know. And when the wind touched the chimes by the porch and made a small, surprised music, neither of us flinched. We just listened. The trial ended months ago, but echoes still live in this house. Sometimes I swear I can hear the creak of my son's chair, the thud of his steps down the hallway. Grief is strange like that. It doesn't leave. It changes shape, wears different clothes, shows up when you're folding laundry or cutting vegetables. Helena Cross is gone, not dead, but locked away. Her name now a cautionary tale. The papers call her the Lavender Widow, a woman who built an empire out of secrets and debt. She tried to smile for the cameras, even in shackles, but the world had already turned its back. Daniel Price sits in protective custody, his testimony poisoning his own career. His name now belongs to the same ledger he once kept for her. And us, we are rebuilding. Emily moved into the house my son once left to me. Now it is ours. We painted the kitchen yellow the way she always wanted. We planted a garden in the back, small at first, but stubborn. Lavender grows near the steps, not as a memory of Helena, but as a sign we reclaimed what she tried to make hers. When it blooms, the air smells clean, not cruel. The scholarship in my son's name opened last week. We sat in the auditorium, watching the first class of recipients, paramedics, nurses, EMTs, stand proudly as their names were called. Emily squeezed my hand until it hurt, and for once I didn't mind the pain. People still ask me why I didn't tell her about the will right away. I don't give excuses anymore. I say, because I was afraid, because I didn't trust the truth, and because love sometimes makes cowards of us. But love can also make us brave. Emily and I don't whisper apologies anymore. We speak them out loud. We put them into walls painted new, into scholarships signed, into dinners cooked and laughter slowly returning. One night, after a long day of planting, we sat on the porch as dusk settled. Fireflies stitched the yard with tiny lights. Emily leaned against me and whispered, "He would have loved this." I didn't need to ask who. A knock came at the door. Just one, ordinary, neighborly. But my chest still clenched before it let go. Emily saw it, squeezed my hand and smiled. "It's okay, we're safe now." I opened the door. It was only the mailman handing me a package. Inside was a small weathered box with no return address. I opened it carefully. Inside lay a single tarnished silver key. The HEC key. Emily's breath caught. But it fell in the river. I closed my hand around it. This time it didn't feel like a curse. It felt like closure. I dropped it into the lavender pot by the porch. The soil took it, the plant standing tall above, fragrant and alive. For once, I didn't need to keep it. For once, I could let go.